Hi, my name is Patti Adams, and I'm the CEO and founder of Scars of the Past Ministry. We're a nonprofit local organization that supports sexual assault victims through a holistic approach. April is Sexual Assault Awareness Month, and in this month, we spend time bringing awareness and education to sexual assault survivors. The theme for this year is Building Connected Communities, and it was developed by the National Sexual Violence Resource Center. Today with us, we're going to have an awesome afternoon with Sgt Bill Davis joining us. I will now take out time to read a short bio of his. Sgt Bill Davis has been a Texas law enforcement officer for 51 years as of February 2024. He is a 36-year veteran of the Beaumont, Texas Police Department. He spent over 20 years as a detective and a sergeant investigating over 7,500 child abuse and sex crime cases. He is an internationally recognized speaker and consultant and has conducted seminars and workshops throughout the U.S. and abroad to over 315,000 people in the past 39 years. He's had articles on child abuse published in state and national publications. He received 2 honorary life membership awards from the Texas Congress of the PTAs, the Governor's Award in Law Enforcement, the Child Advocate of the Year from CASA, the Layperson Exemplary Service Award from the Texas School of Counseling Association, and the Kinder Award for Art and Literature from Memorial Hermann Hospital, and the University of Texas Medical Branch in Houston, Texas, just to mention a few of his awards. On December 12, 1998, Sgt Bill Davis' nationally acclaimed true crimes novel, So Innocent Yet So Dead, was published. On April 1st, 2016, Sgt Davis' second true crime novel, Imperfect Love, Imperfect Justice, was published. Sgt Davis' third book, Look Out Satan, God's at Work, an inspirational Christian book, is now available. You will see some information at the end that will help you to know more about Sgt Bill Davis. Let's get on with this interview as I ask him a couple of questions about how did you go about solving all of these crimes? Sgt Bill Davis. Hi, Sgt Bill. How are you doing this morning?
Miss Patty, I'm doing fantastic.
I'm so
It's so
happy that
good
you
to
were able
see
to
you.
join us. It's good to see you too, very much so. I'm going to go ahead and give our audience a little bit of background about how we met. And just so that they'll know, you all will hear me say Sergeant Bill, but you may also hear me say Bill because he's like an old friend. We both love Christ, we both love the Lord, and we both enjoy helping others. So we were like a match made from the beginning. I met Bill during the first ever 2-day 2023 Domestic Violence and Sexual Assault Summit seminar given by TASA. And for you all who don't know what TASA is, it's an acronym that stands for Texas Association Against Sexual Assault. It's based in Austin, Texas. The event was hosted by the Family Services here in Beaumont, and Sergeant Bill, my friend, was one of the many facilitators who presented during the breakout sessions. His breakout session was legal requirements to report pregnant Texas teens as child abuse victims. And it's a session that I will always remember and one that I thoroughly enjoyed. And so let's welcome Sergeant Bill again. We're so happy to have him this morning. I know he's busy. So the fact that he even agreed to this just like warmed me my heart. So tell me what's going on with you this morning. How did you start your day off?
Well, first of all, Miss Patty, I want to say thank you.
You're welcome.
It is an honor to be doing this interview with you. It really is. And folks, I want y'all to know that Miss Patty is something else. She is an advocate like you cannot imagine. And I am very honored to be not only knowing her, but a friend of hers.
Thank you so much. See why I love him? Isn't he just lovable? I love it so much. So the way this is going to go is it's going to be kind of formal, kind of informal. So if you need to take a drink of water, so that you're not stumbling over words or, your throat's just dry and we all have that, feel free. It's not going to be like I'm going to shoot you or anything. You may see me get some juice along the way or something, but I won't drink any alcohol or any foolishness so that this interview will go well. So what I'm going to start this interview off is doing is I just want to learn more about you. I had a chance to meet you at the session. We've gone to breakfast. I've ordered some of your books and we've talked about me coming to Winnie to come to a flea market. So we've had quite a few conversations, but the conversations hasn't really told me who Bill really is. So the very first question that I have for you is, How did you get an interest in law enforcement to begin with? What about law enforcement drove you to say, this is what I want to do with the rest of my life?
Miss Patty, and you'll understand this being a good Christian lady. Uh, the next, well, actually, the last chapter in my new book is entitled God Works in Mysterious Ways. And He really does. Uh, I never had any idea when I was growing up that I wanted to be a cop.
Wow, okay.
I went to college and I was kind of not really sure of what I wanted to do.
Mhm.
And a friend of mine, God love him, he's up in heaven right now,
Okay.
named Philip,
Yes.
but he was with the Port Arthur Police Department.
Mhm.
And we were talking one day, and I said, well, I'm not really sure what I want to do. And he said, Bill, you ought to apply for the police department. They're taking applications right now. And I thought, oh, well, what the heck?
Yeah, exactly.
And when I went to sign up, what's interesting, to sign up to take the civil service examination,
Mhm.
the guy said, young man, you're only 20 years old. You can't take this test. I don't know why these words came out of my mouth, but I
I'm sure it
said,
was a God thing. I
sir,
thought it was leading up to a God thing. Go ahead.
I said, sir, by the time you grade my test and do all the background checks and everything, I'm going to be 21 in 2 weeks, and I'll be qualified to be your police officer. And believe it or not, 2 weeks after I turned 21 years old, myself and another guy, we were the two out of a room full of guys taking the test.
Yes.
We were the top two, and I got sworn in. I believe it was August 21st of 1971.
That is
And
beautiful.
well, it was, I was raised by good Christian parents.
Mhm.
They taught me right from wrong.
Mhm.
They taught me truth versus a lie.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I saw some corruption back in those days that did not appeal to me.
Right.
And I left that department in January of 1972.
Mhm.
But that urge inside of me just kept saying, Bill, you really enjoyed being a cop. You really enjoyed that. And the
Yeah.
next thing I know, I'm applying to the Beaumont Police Department.
Mhm.
In June of 1972, I got sworn into Beaumont PD. But I was going through a rough time in my life,
Mhm.
uh, personally. And I stayed about 3 months. In October of 1972, I left. But again, that urge was stronger than ever.
Yes, yes.
And January 17 of 1973, I got sworn back into the Beaumont Police Department, and I was not about to leave. I stayed 26 years. But the day after I retired from Beaumont PD, I had another law enforcement Texas agency carrying my state law enforcement commission, and I still do.
I love it. Listening to your story made me think about myself. When I went into banking and I went to go have my interview, the manager asked me, so, ma'am, what kind of banking experience do you have? And I said, none. Well, what kind of cash handling experience do you have? I said, none other than my own. And I think I handled it pretty well. So so what makes you think I should hire you from anyone else? I say, because if you hire me, I'll make a commitment this day that I will never be out of balance once I'm hired for your company. And I never was in all the years that I worked for them, was even out
Isn't that
one penny.
awesome?
And he came back and told me about that later. He said, I thought, I don't know if I should take a chance on this woman. He's like, but boy, am I glad that we did. So again, it had to be a God thing because I didn't have that kind of confidence at the time. I just knew I
Yes,
needed a job
ma'am.
that paid well to take care of my children.
There you go.
you know.
Well, I was in patrol,
Yes.
and after about 6 years, I went, I'm tired of doing these rec reports and all that sort of stuff, and I wanted to be a detective.
Mhm.
And I took the sergeant. You had to be a sergeant back then to be a
Correct.
detective at Beaumont Police Department.
Yes, sir.
And so I took my sergeant's test. They hired me and another guy, not hired us, but promoted us to
Mhm.
sergeant, and went to the detective division. Had a great 1 year
Okay.
senior detective to teach me how to be a detective.
Correct.
Next thing you know, my lieutenant comes to me and says, Bill, guess what? You've been a detective a year. Now you get to go and you get to go and to either evenings or midnights. I went, oh my goodness. Well, I chose midnights.
Yes, yes.
And so I loved it. I got to ride around. Wait a minute. I'm telling a lot of my third book, but that's okay. Anyway,
That's okay. It's so phenomenal that people still want to read it. I'm going to make
well,
sure.
and I'll tell you about the third book in just a little bit, but I loved being a midnight shift detective because I could ride around in a plain looking car.
Yes.
I had prostitutes
Yes.
um, try and do their thing with me. I had my partner at the time. He and I, from Thanksgiving to Christmas, we caught more burglars than the entire police department because
Really?
we were in plain
What a
cars and
record.
could sneak up on the place.
Yes, yes,
And I was really enjoying it.
yes.
And next thing you know, my lieutenant comes to me and says, Bill, uh, you were unanimously chosen to be to fill the empty spot in the Special Crimes Bureau. In 2 weeks, you're going up to the juvenile division. I went, I don't want to go. I don't want to deal with snotty nosed brats. I
Me
went
either.
up to my lieutenant, who was a good friend,
Yes, of course, of course.
and his name was Harold.
Okay.
I said, Harold, I don't want to be here. I don't want to deal with snotty nosed brats. And he looked at me and he said, Bill, you are here, but you have a choice. You can either deal with snotty nosed brats or you can have every child abuse case that happens in the city of Beaumont to investigate. I said, I'll take the latter.
Okay.
And next thing I know, I was swamped with physical and sexual abuse to children cases. And you know what? I've had detective friends of mine come to me and say, Bill, I can't do that. I can't do it. I can't do it. But it really got to me being able to investigate those cases, not negatively, but positively.
Right.
God put a thought in my head that I always to this very day have dealt with. And that is every time I opened that folder and saw the name of that victim, I realized I was the only person on this earth that could get them out of the hell they were in, if at
Yes.
all possible.
Well, we're going to take a
And
pause for
that
just
was
a
my
second.
motto for
We're going to take
all
a
these
pause.
years.
We're going
And,
to take a
you
pause
know,
because before you keep going, I need to back up for a minute. So we're just going to take a pause. We're going to take a breath.
sure.
I need to thank you for your service
Oh,
because it takes a mighty special person to want to fight crime for one, but then to want to fight crime and save our children. That's a whole nother special person. So from the bottom of my heart, I didn't want to get all the way through this interview and do that at the end. I don't normally stop people in the middle of them talking. I'm like, hey, stop, stop, because God was laying on my heart to say, no, you need to thank him. And so sincerely, I thank you. And you don't know, like without me even asking any questions, you're just going on. I'm like, okay, tell me about the different areas of law enforcement you work in. Boom, he's already told us.
he's already. Well,
Tell me about
I'll
an
tell
area
you.
that you're passionate about. So you started talking about you in special crimes. You didn't want to deal with the snot-nosed kids. And then you got put with the child abuse children. And you felt a passion. You felt led that you were going to be the person to save them. Am I right so far?
Yes, ma'am. And a lot of police officers, and I hope they watch this interview because some of them they think, well, my job is to put people in jail. But God put a special thought in my head. Said, Bill, your job is not to put people in jail. Your job is to protect that child or rape victim and discover the truth and protect them that day and the next day and help them the week after and the year after and 20 years from now. Miss Patti, one of my greatest stories, a young lady at Walmart came up to me. She said, "You're Sergeant Davis, aren't you?" And I said, "Yes, ma'am."
Yes.
She said, "Well, I just wanted to say hello. I'm sure you don't remember me. You did my investigation 20 years ago." And I always answer this way with a question: did I do you a good job?
Yes.
"Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. He's still in prison." And I said, "Well, how are you?" "Oh, I'm okay. I've got a husband and two children. I got a good job. I'm fine." But I handed her my card and I said, "Well, if you ever need me,
Mhm.
I'm a phone call away."
Praise God.
2 weeks later, that young lady called me, bawling her eyes out.
Mm.
She couldn't even talk on the phone.
Oh.
But I knew exactly who it was, Miss Patti.
Mhm.
When her tears subsided, I said, "Well, for the last 2 weeks, you haven't been able to eat, you haven't been able to sleep, you fought with your husband, you fought with your children, because when you saw me, it brought back
Brought all
all
that
those
up.
memories you
Sir.
had stuck in your subconscious
Yes, sir.
mind."
Yes.
She
Yes. It was
goes,
a trigger.
"How did you know that?" And I
Mhm.
went, "This ain't my first rodeo."
Yeah. Yeah.
I said, "Did you get counseling
Mhm.
after I investigated your case?"
Right.
"No, sir."
Mhm.
I said, "It's interesting how God works, because 2 days later, 2 days earlier, I had talked to a friend of mine that was a therapist,
Okay.
just out of the clear blue.
Yes. Yes.
I said, "If I can get counseling set up for you, would you go?"
Yes. Yes.
"Sir." I said, "Well, hang loose. I'll call you back in a minute." I called that therapist.
Mhm.
I told her the story.
Mhm.
I said, uh, "Would you mind doing therapy with this sweet young lady?"
Mhm.
She goes, "Sure." I said, "Oh, and you're going to do it pro bono?" She goes, "Yes, Bill, I'll do it." I called the lady back and I
Oh,
said, "Okay, here's her phone number, the therapist's phone number. You call her. She's waiting on you to call."
right.
I hung up. 2 weeks later, I ran into the therapist and I said, "Oh, by the way, that young lady called you." She goes, "Oh, Bill, I can't tell you that stuff." I said, "Damn it, did she call you?" She goes, "Yes, she did." About a year later, I saw the young lady, and the first thing she did was she ran around,
Gave you a big hug, I'm sure.
hugged my neck. I said, "Is this the same young lady that called me on the phone a year ago?" And she goes, "No, sir, it's not."
Exactly.
I said, "Good. Keep
And see,
going."
that's what makes all the difference in the world is that you're not just passionate about solving cases. You're passionate about lifelong living for those who have to go on after the abuse. And that means more than anything else in the world is
Well,
that you have taken them by the hand and you haven't just said, okay, you get a check mark. Well, solve that case. I'm done. I solved that case. I'm done. If you see them, you're not running the other way to ignore them. You're actually standing right there to face them and say, hey, it's good to see you. I remember you and have a conversation. That goes such a long ways. Go ahead.
I went to a tire shop one day to get a front end alignment on my truck.
Yes, sir.
And as I'm talking to the owner, this guy walks up to me and he said, "You're Sergeant Davis, aren't you?" And I went, "Yes." He said, "Well, my name is John Smith, and I just wanted to come say hi to you. You sent me to prison about 20 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm just waiting to get, you
Beat up.
know, hammered in the face, you
Exactly.
know."
Like I
And
said,
he
beat up.
goes, "I just wanted to come over and thank you. For the first 5 years I was in prison, I was mad as all get out at you. But then I started realizing, wait a minute, I'm here not because of you. I'm here because of me and what I did."
Yes, yes.
He said, "Sergeant Davis, had you not put me in prison, I'd be dead or in
Mm.
prison for life. I'm now out of prison. I have a wife, two children, and a wonderful job. And I just wanted to say thank you because you saved my life."
Oh,
And that was the guy I
wow.
put in prison. But I have things like that happen. Well, I
Yes,
can tell you robbery detectives don't have that.
yes, yes.
Burglary detectives don't have that. Even
Yeah.
homicide detectives don't have that.
Right.
But when you're dealing with in here
Mm-hmm.
with those victims,
Right.
My goal always has been a child or rape victim deserves the right to be heard, and
Yes.
they deserve the right to
To
be
be seen.
believed.
Yes. And
That has been
believed.
my
Yes.
motto.
Yes.
And from that, guess what? I've probably put more people in jail than anybody. Uh, who knows? But I do know this, that I have lots of victims slash survivors
Mhm.
that have been able to carry on with a good, positive life. Never forgetting what happened, but going forward, many of them to help others.
Right.
That to me is a success.
That is very much a success.
Well, I'm going along in my life and I'm solving these cases, and it's just almost overwhelming. And February the 14th, Valentine's Day of 1983, another detective and I went to Sam Houston State University.
Oh, I
We
almost went
heard,
there for
yes,
college.
that's your alma mater?
It's not, but that was going to be my alma mater. It
Oh,
is
was it?
University of Phoenix, but that was when I was much younger. So continue.
Well, we listened to this detective for 2 days,
Yes, sir.
retired detective from Los Angeles, but he did child abuse investigations.
Mhm.
And all the way home, my buddy was driving.
Mhm.
I'm looking out the window, but God was talking to me like I mean, he was just saying, Bill,
Mhm.
if that, excuse me, fat bald headed guy can do a program like that, so can you.
Yes. Yes.
And the very next day, went to my lieutenant. I said, look, I'd like to put a presentation together on child abuse,
Mhm.
because people don't realize every time I would open one of those folders and see that victim's name,
Yes.
Miss Patty, I was too late. I
Yes.
was too late for that victim
I understand.
to have stopped what happened to them.
Right.
So I started working, putting a child abuse seminar together.
Mhm.
And the core of it is still to this day my child abuse, a national epidemic program that I ultimately put in this child abuse booklet,
Yes.
which
Yes.
is now originally, I think it was 90 pages and then 98 pages. And now it's 127 pages.
Taking care of children.
And
Yes.
because I realized if I could educate law enforcement officers, if I could educate uh, child protective services workers, if I could educate moms and dads about child abuse, then maybe we could stop some of this abuse before it happens. Well, guess what? I was wrong, because what happened, Miss Patty, as I did these programs starting July 26th of 1983,
Yes, sir.
and since then I've only done, I think, about 320,000 people that I've done programs to throughout Texas, nationally and internationally. But I began to realize as I did these programs that all of a sudden that closet door where they had been hiding flung open,
Right.
and
Right.
people began to realize, wait a minute, I can go and talk to Bill. I
Mhm.
can talk to him and tell him what happened to me.
Right.
In 1994, my two partners and I
Mhm.
were suddenly surprised by a reporter from the Beaumont Enterprise newspaper.
Mhm.
Oh my gosh, it was just published that per 100,000 population, Beaumont is the rape capital of America.
Mm.
And I was the
Insane.
spokesperson, and they threw that microphone in my face. Bill, what do you think? What do you think?
Yes. Yes.
And I went, wow, thank you for the compliment.
Mhm. Mhm.
And they were like speechless. And I went, because my partners and I have worked very hard
Mhm.
to go out into the community, do programs, talk to people, let them know that come talk to us. If you
Absolutely.
have been the victim of child abuse or a sex crime, come talk to us. You will be treated with dignity. You
Mhm.
will be treated with respect. You will be treated with professionalism. And what happened? We were overwhelmed with cases.
Yes.
But
And you just went directly into the theme for this session. The theme for this session is building connected communities. And so you just expressed very well how you and your partner, along with others who may have helped you along the way, help to build and connect communities together to solve the crimes and to get these people taken care of, victims and
well,
survivors.
Miss Patty, what happened is as I started presenting these programs, it just exploded.
Yes.
Next thing you know, I was using all of my vacation time, comp time, traveling all over Texas, even nationally, and in 1991 internationally, uh, because people realized we don't understand this.
Right.
Child abuse is very complex, and it is. It is very complex. And by and large, it's not just one entity. In other words, if you or a family that has someone murdered, who are you going to deal with? Well, the homicide division at Beaumont PD or wherever. But with child abuse, it's totally and completely different
Correct.
because number one, you're going to have your detective with your department. Number two, you're probably going to have to go sexually to see a sexual assault nurse examiner. Please don't go see a
Yes,
doctor,
sir.
see a
Yes,
sexual
sir.
assault nurse
Absolutely
examiner.
same. Yes.
And then you're going to have to deal with usually a children's advocacy center
Correct.
where the child is going to be videotaped so they don't have to tell their story over and over and over. And I must say that I'm very proud to have been one of the founding members of the Garth House
Yes.
in Beaumont, which was the second advocacy center in the whole state of Texas.
That's awesome.
And we started it, I think it was July of 1994, and they have done thousands and thousands of interviews with specially trained interviewers to help tell that child's story.
Mm.
Uh, but then you have now the district attorney's office, or maybe let's just use Southeast Texas for an example. Let's suppose a child is brought to well, I worked this investigation. The child was brought to St. Elizabeth Hospital, but come to find out, the uh, abuse occurred just outside of Abilene, Texas,
Yes.
500 miles away.
Right. Right.
And so I had to work with detectives up there, and they had to work with me, a detective down here. And guess what? We got convictions on both the mother and the father who physically abused this child. So a lot of the times it's usually multiple agencies involved, CPS. If it's a um, person, the defendant is somebody that is what we would slangily call an in-home perpetrator. CPS is involved.
Yes.
But guess what? CPS is not involved in all child abuse cases. Folks, did you hear what I said?
Yes. Very good point.
CPS is not. By the way, if you want to find out what it is, the number one law that I talk about, or the first law that I talk about, I should say, in this booklet is the reporting law.
Yes.
And
Yes.
on the second page of that reporting law, I show you, and by the way, there's two words in this booklet that everybody loves: the law.
Yes.
I
Yes.
copied the law straight out of this child abuse, straight out of the law book. And on the second page of the reporting law, I show my audience, my readers, in order the way the law is written. And CPS is not number one.
Correct. Correct. Yes.
Law enforcement is number one.
Yes. Yes.
CPS has up to 24 hours to get there, even on a serious situation.
Yes.
If I'm your sergeant, you better be there in a few minutes.
Right. Exactly. Now
And so
you
what's
solved over about, let's see, 7,000 to 7,500 cases. I have a question
that's
for you. So
yes.
over the many years, there was a time that it seemed like whoever the perpetrator was of a rape victim, they got less time than a murderer did. even when they raped or sexually assaulted or were sexually violent toward a child. How have you seen that change over the years? Do you think that our justice system is more cognizant of the fact that this is just a bigger crime as someone murdering someone because it has lifelong implications and is willing to give more time for those who are sexually abusing our children?
You know, Miss Patty, the way our legislators have done the law
Mhm.
uh, for child abuse really has been fairly positive. For instance, um, for years, way back when I started,
Mhm.
there was a statute of limitations that a child had to come forward. But now, under the law of injury to a child, under the law of sexual assault, aggravated sexual assault, there's no statute of limitations. In other words, 20 years can go by and somebody finally say, he's still doing it. I need to come forward and say something. And that has happened.
And this
That
is
has,
such a God thing because that was going to be where I was led into next is that, I was a victim of childhood sexual abuse. And during that time, you're right, the statute of limitations ran out. So I never had that opportunity to go and have that person convicted for the crime that they did. And it took me years because no one's educated. So it wasn't like someone just came to me one day and said, "Hey, Patty, you can go and you can still make that person pay for what they did to you as a child." Coming to seminars and things like what you put on educates the community to let them know that you do not have to sit back and allow these things to happen without justice being serviced. And so, thank you so much for that because people don't know and they need to know, especially when it is a child that's involved. Go ahead.
well, I was traveling around and
Yes, sir.
doing this child abuse seminar.
Yes.
And the reason this booklet came about, I've got to tell you kind of a funny story.
Okay.
I was in Newark, New Jersey, and this lady came up to me, pardon my attempt at their slang,
Okay.
but she goes, Sgt Davis, I had done a 3 hour program trying to condense my 8 hour presentation into
Woo.
3 hours.
Yeah.
I was talking to child Head Start teachers
Oh, okay.
in the Newark, New Jersey area.
Mhm.
And so I had two classes, a
Mhm.
3 hour program before lunch and a 3 hour program after lunch. I
Mhm.
had done the 3 hour program before lunch. This lady walked up to me after the program. She goes, Sgt Davis, you just talk so fast. I just don't understand just what you're saying. You got a pamphlet booklet, something like that, so I follow along. And I went, huh?
I don't, but I will.
But she
It's what
started,
inspired you to do that.
well, no, God inspired me to do
Okay.
it. He just used her as the
There we
messenger.
go. Get it, set me
And
straight.
I
Set me
came
straight.
back and spent months upon months putting this together and have
Yes.
added to it as the laws have changed, that other issues have changed to make it a 127-page book, if you will, because if you folded it in half, well, it would be the size of this book right here and the
Yes.
other two.
Yes.
So I say it's a booklet, but I think it's really a book.
Yes.
Uh,
I would agree with you. So let's get into some of these books that you've written because I read all of them and I've actually put reviews on two. I have not put the review on the last one, but it's my I will be doing that here real soon. Tell us
Good.
about some of the books you've written and what inspired you to write those books. I know God inspired you, but was there a particular case or instance? I want to let you share it and not me share your work that you've done.
I'm
So,
going to preface it by one other little thing that I have
okay.
published,
Yes, sir.
and then I'll get into the three books.
Okay.
Hey, kids, I didn't forget about you.
Child safe.
This is my children's coloring book. And what I
Okay.
did, Miss Patty, is I took my program that I started in 1985,
Yes, sir.
and God works in mysterious ways because
Mhm.
he had this other Beaumont officer who was in crime prevention,
Mhm.
and he and I went to a school district and did a program. I did the child abuse program. He did one that he does for children. As we're going home, he looked at me and he said, Bill, can I tell you something? I said, well, of course. He goes, uh, you're educating grown-ups. You're not doing a thing for children.
Okay.
Oh my gosh. And do you know that's the only time he and I ever went and did a presentation together?
Okay.
Now tell me God doesn't work in mysterious ways.
Spectacular. Yes, yes.
And I came home, and of all things, I got in touch with an artist, and I
Okay.
took my children's safety program that I
Yes.
would love to come to your elementary school and present.
Okay.
And I put it in coloring book form. Audience, I'll come there. I've gone all over the country and done this program because I don't talk about laws
Right.
specifically.
Yes.
And yeah, kids enjoy coloring, but guess what? As you look, I just picked out these pages. Look at the
Yes.
bottom. You
Yes.
have to answer questions.
Yes. What
So
should
it's
we do?
not just a
Yes.
coloring book, it's an educational
Educational
book
book.
for children that they get to color in. Well, then I'm going along, and October 6, 1990,
Hmm.
I didn't know about this crime.
Hmm.
This 10-year-old little girl was kidnapped
Hmm.
and murdered. She was, it happened at 10 a.m. at Larry's Old Time Trade Days when it began in Beaumont, Texas, which is now down in Winnie, Texas. Uh, she should have never been found, folks.
Hmm.
You won't know that until you get to the very back. So when you read the book, don't you cheat and go to the back and read my theory of what happened that day. But you will find when you get back there, something happened only God could do between 12 and 1 o'clock that allowed her to ever be found. And 3 hours later, at 3 p.m., she was found under a bridge in southern Newton County, Texas. I didn't know about it. I
Right.
get a phone call Sunday morning. Bill, get to the station quick. We got a dead 10-year-old little girl.
Hmm.
What are they doing calling me? I'm not a homicide detective.
Hmm.
But as I got to the station, I found out they had just done the autopsy, and that precious, innocent 10-year-old little girl had been viciously raped.
Show your book so they can know what the name of the book is.
The book
Let's
is entitled So
So
Innocent,
innocent
Yet
yet so
So
dead.
Dead. And
Yes.
that picture
Hmm.
is her mom's favorite picture of her when she was
Oh,
4 years
so
old.
precious, so precious.
And long story short, I told you that something, nothing short of divine intervention, happened between 12 and 1 o'clock that day that allowed her to ever be found.
Mhm.
Another detective, our top forensic detective, and me
Mhm.
were riding with the sheriff that Sunday night, and at 8 p.m., old dark dirt road, middle of nowhere, couldn't take you back there if I tried. Something happened again. It
Mm.
was like God saying, I'm fed up with this guy
Yes,
hurting people,
right.
and by George,
We're
he's
gonna get
gonna
him.
he's gonna get stopped.
Yes,
And
yes.
I handcuffed him at 3 a.m. that Monday morning, 40 hours after he kidnapped her.
Thank goodness.
Well, the trial took place the next year,
Hmm.
and my job that first day was to get the pathologist to the trial,
Hmm.
60 miles away.
Hmm.
And the next thing you know, we're riding along. I'd given him my notes, 20
Hmm.
something pages of notes for him to
Yes,
read. So well, we were running late because of him seeing patients. And I said, don't look and see how fast I'm driving, just read my notes.
right.
As we pulled up to the courthouse, he said, Bill, thank you for letting me read your notes. You need to write a book about this case.
Yes. Yes. And let me tell
God
you,
plants a
people, let
seed,
me
doesn't
tell
he?
our audience right now, because I don't want Bill to give away any secrets of the book. I really want you to go out and purchase this book. No, I'm not a solicitor here. I am doing that because it is so well written. And the thing that I like most is one of the things that Bill said, and he now said in two of the books that he wrote, was that we see cases like we're watching some TV show. Like that's the only case that they're working on. When in reality, they may be working on 19 cases, or they could be working on 100
Yes.
cases, and yet they still have to find a way to solve each one. And so the elite effort that he put into the writing of the book to let us be able to see step by step the process was just absolutely amazing. And so I thank you for that book. I hate to cut you off, but it's like sometimes I have to get things in so that you will
I
know.
understand. I understand, Miss Patty. And I came out with the book originally December of 1998. It did not have the starburst, But October 1, 2002, 11 years, 9 months later, he was on death row. And by the way, ladies and gentlemen, the jury found this guy guilty of capital murder in 45 minutes. They sentenced him to death in 35 minutes, the fastest I can find anywhere in the United States since the U.S. Supreme Court reinstated the death penalty in 1976. That's what, let's see, 48 years ago. I cannot find anybody else being found by a jury convicted and sentenced faster to death than this guy. Mom and stepdad did not want to go to the execution October 1, 2002. She asked the sheriff of Newton County and I be able to go in their place. I found out it's rare, but they granted their wish. Went and watched him take his last breath of air, came home, did a bunch of research of what all happened. The 11 years, 9 months he was on death row, and I've had people come back and say, Bill, you were so descriptive about October 1, 2002. I'll swear you came by my house, picked me up, and I was standing beside you when he took that last breath. I can close my eyes and even picture the color of the walls. Yes. Yep, I put the color of the walls in there.
Yes, it's extremely descriptive, but for a reason. It keeps you engaged, and I love the fact that he says they are true crime novels, because that's exactly what it is. This isn't some fiction that he just went to sleep and thought of some characters and said, "Hey, let me put this down and write it." No, these are actually true events that happened to real people, and that it took our friend Sgt Bill Davis to go out and solve. And so you had another book that you wrote.
Well, here it is right here.
Okay.
Imperfect Love, Imperfect Justice. While I was writing the first version of that first book, I got a phone call from a detective in the neighboring county from Beaumont. Bill, I need you to take over this case I've been investigating, because this daddy has been molesting his daughter from age 4 to age 11. Mother walked through the door and caught him. I put him in jail, but the guy, as a contractor, had money bonded out in about 2 hours. He's terrorizing the family, but he didn't start molesting this little girl, his own biological daughter, in my county. He started molesting her in your town. Come take over this case. And just very quickly, Miss Patti, I have had so many people come up to me who bought the book last month at Larry's Trade Days or some trade show, and they'd come up to me and say, Bill, you told my story, just different names, dates, and places in this book.
Yes.
And ladies and gentlemen, to solve the case for this beautiful 11-year-old little girl, we're in Southeast Texas. I wound up on top of a mountain outside of Alpine, Texas, in the West Texas mountains.
I know exactly where that is.
You know where
I lived in Alpine for a short time.
Did you really? Well, just north of Alpine, if you look on our topographical map, is the Davis Mountain, the Glass Mountain Range. And I wound up on top of one of those mountains, 6,000-foot elevation, to solve the case for this little girl. And I'm not going to tell you any more about it. But
don't tell any more about it.
I will say this, in both of these books, ladies and gentlemen, in both of them, I got something that I've been told is rare as hen's teeth, and you're not going to find them in any other true crime books. I got the trial transcripts.
Yes, sir.
So when you get to the trial, ladies and gentlemen, on both of these books, and you start seeing quotation marks, I didn't make those words up, folks.
Right.
That's word for word testimony, like you're one of the jurors listening to it.
Now, I will say something about imperfect justice, imperfect love. And that is, if you're a sexual assault survivor, there are parts of the book that may be a bit triggering, because it's so real, and it's the actual events of what happened to the little girl by her family member. And a lot of times, and I'm sure Bill can back me up with this, people think that it's the mean stranger that you never met before that did that, when most of the cases, and a lot of the cases, it's someone that you know. And unfortunately, a lot of times it's someone within your home. So I would encourage every parent who has a child to not be deceived into thinking that it can't happen in my home. Read that book and you can see that it can even happen in your home right under your nose.
I'm going to throw something in, Miss Patti, since you brought it up.
Yes, sir.
So our news media and our politicians want our citizens, our people, to believe that, oh my gosh, the number one way children being sexually abused, sex trafficking, sex trafficking, sex trafficking. Guess what?
Mhm.
Yes, I've been retired a few years. I
Yes, sir.
talked to a friend of mine that is a sex trafficking detective
Mhm.
with Beaumont PD. And I said, I need to ask you a question.
Mhm.
I know what the statistics used to be. I
Mhm.
want to make sure they still are.
Mhm.
I said, with sex trafficking, what percentage of it is out of all sexual abuse to children is sex trafficking? And he looked at me and he said, Sarge, it hadn't changed.
Mhm.
3 to 5% at the very most,
Mhm.
which means, ladies and gentlemen, listen to what Miss Patti and I are telling you. 94% of, or 93, 94% of all sexual abuse to children, that's somebody in Texas, 16 years of age and younger, is somebody they know, somebody they love, somebody they trust, and many times somebody they live with. Let me give you the top 7 child molesters.
Okay.
Number 1, guess who it is?
Go ahead.
Daddy.
Mhm.
Guess who's number 2?
Mhm.
Stepdaddy. And they'll flip flop back and forth depending on who and where the survey is done. Number
Mhm.
3, mama's boyfriend. Number 4, guess who?
Mhm.
Mama.
Mhm.
Uncle, grandparent, brother. You know what I don't see in the top 7?
What's that?
I don't see boyfriend,
Yes.
and I do not see sex trafficking stranger.
Correct.
So,
Correct.
ladies and gentlemen, please let that sink in. And
Yes.
as
Sir.
Ms. Pat, look, I've had people with this second book,
Mhm.
Imperfect Love, Imperfect Justice. I have had people get it 1 month, come back to me and go, Bill, it just touched my heart so bad I couldn't finish it.
Mhm.
Okay,
Mhm.
I can understand.
Yeah.
I've had others come back and say, Bill, thank you for writing this book.
Mhm.
It was therapy for me.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
you just in the book put in different names, dates, and places,
It's me.
my story. And
Yes.
that's what survivors have come and told me.
Yes. Very much
Well,
so.
then, about 40 years ago, well, now it's March 1, so
Mhm.
January, 40 years ago, I had an interesting thing happen to me. Um, it was January 7th, 1984, 7:05 a.m. at a distance of about 8 feet. I
Mm.
had my guy,
Mm.
and he shot me with a 12 gauge shotgun.
Mm.
Well, guess what? I should have died. But Miss Patty, as you've said, God
This
had
is a
other.
but God moment. But God.
Well, I started taking notes
Yes.
back then, just for whatever reason. I didn't know why.
Mhm.
Take notes.
Mhm.
I didn't know that some almost 40 years later, I would take those notes and my life experiences and put it into a memoir.
Yes. Look out, Satan.
Here's the
God's
way
at
I
work.
tell the title. Look out, Satan. God's at work.
Yes. Yes.
And I ask people, please do not read this book to read about me, even though it's a memoir. Read it to read about how God has worked through me to save lives, especially children's
And
lives.
this book is full of scriptures and truly just how God was at work. And so I loved it. Like I said, I haven't done the official review, but I have read it. I just need to do the review. And it's packed with the scriptures that goes along with the events that happen. Now, when I first saw the book and I read the back, I'm thinking that Bill was shot in the line of duty. And my heart was just crushed because of all the work that he's done to help children and to help others. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, I know it's a dangerous situation all the time. But then it says how he actually got shot. And he already kind of spilled the beans by saying it was a friend of his that actually shot him. Nevertheless, very devastating and very, very much so impacted his life. So much to where I'm not going to tell you, you have to read it for yourself. But he didn't let that stop him. He continued to do God's work and do police force work also. Go ahead, Bill.
Well, Miss Patty, it took a lot of years.
Mhm.
Well, it took a good year plus of therapy to get back to my old self. And you're never really your old self when parts of your body is blown away.
Right.
But it just took a while for me to take that very negative experience that happened to me
Mhm.
and realize and well, I'm not going to tell you the prayer
Mhm.
that I prayed. I want people to read it in the book. But while I was lying on that ground and bleeding, I said a special prayer that I've never forgotten word by word to this day.
Mhm.
And he heard my prayer, you know. And
Praise
so
God.
through the years, I've been able to take that very negative thing that happened to me
Mhm.
and turn it into something positive, especially when I do my child safety first and forever with Officer Bill presentation at elementary schools from pre-K through fifth grade. And it took a while.
Mhm.
In here, it took a while, but it also took a while for me to say, "Thank you, Lord." But don't read the epilogue. In the very back of the book. Don't go cheat. Read the whole book. But
I didn't cheat.
when you read the epilogue
Yeah.
and you have Miss Patti, I want people to realize that I believe with all my heart
Mhm.
uh, exactly what I believe happened to me January 7, 1984, 7:05 a.m. I
Yes, sir.
totally and completely believe what you're going to read in that epilogue is actually what happened. The Lord's put it on my heart. That's what happened.
Well, I tell
And
you what, Bill, we're
that's
coming up
why
on 1 hour of chatting with each other, and I want people to actually take the time to listen to this video. So this is what I want you to do before I close us out, is I want you to tell the audience, I know you mentioned that you'll go to elementary school and do workshops and presentations, and I know you also go to churches. Are there other places that you go that you would do workshops? That's the
I
first
would
part.
like to I would
And the
like to
second
tell that.
part is going to be,
Oh,
I want you to give me a phone number or website or email address, something to where our audience can reach out to you personally to say, hey, I would love for you to come and do a workshop for us. So go.
okay. So, folks, here's what I want you to do. First of all, get your pen and paper and get ready. I want to tell you about two other presentations that I do, besides the ones we talked about thus far, the one for elementary. In 1991, the Lord laid it on my heart through something that happened. You'll read about it in book 3. Uh, I believe it had a whole group of people, teenagers. Bill, you need to put a program together to go talk to these teenagers to save their lives. Well, I did. Believe it or not, it's an hour and a half. It's 90 minutes long. But in that program, I tell teenagers what Texas law under criminal law and civil law says about this 3-letter word, sex.
Yes.
I have their undivided attention in about 30 seconds. And I've even had counselors say, Bill, it's impossible for you to hold the attention of teenagers for 90 solid minutes. I've also wagered them and said, okay, if I do keep their attention, I want to come to your school. And this one program, when I finished, the counselor walked up and said, from another school, said, Bill, did you bring your calendar with you? So, ladies and gentlemen, our teenagers are having sex right and left. I don't want to see some young man go to prison for having sex with his teenage girlfriend. I don't want to see his teenage girlfriend get pregnant. And so I give this program. In fact, it's been my most requested program throughout my career. I have spoken to over 155,000 teenagers in Texas alone. The other program I want to tell you about that I do to save your life is entitled Personal Safety, a Fact of Life. Now we need to talk about us. We need to talk about especially adults. And in this program, I want to show you how to make your home safer. I want to show you how to make your car safer. I want to show you how to make yourself safer. And I tell pastors all the time, I don't want to see you going to Miss Jones's hospital room because she's got a broken hip because somebody tried to or did steal her purse. I want Miss Jones to tell you what happened.
That she beat the crap out of them with that purse. Oh, I'm sorry.
Well, I'll tell you what I will do, folks, ladies. In this program, I'll show you how to properly carry your purse that greatly reduces your possibility of having your purse stolen and you possibly being hurt.
Yes, sir.
1 hour long could save your life. Now,
That's
ladies and
awesome.
gentlemen, people come up to me all the time and say, Bill, I thought you retired. What's going on? You got a police uniform on, blah, blah, blah. And I tell them very quickly, I said, well, I guess I'll retire when I take my last breath.
So you will be an honorary police officer, law enforcement forever.
Well, guess what? You're looking at what I'll probably be buried in. But
so Bill,
ladies
give
and
us your
gentlemen,
email address, how someone
my
can
email
contact
address, I'm going to give you 2 email addresses. Write
Go
these
ahead.
down because I want you to be able to get in touch with me. My
Yes.
computer genius last week supposedly fixed the first one. Very simple. Bill, all lowercase, Bill at takingcareofchildren.net, all one word. If you have a problem with that one, go to SGT, which stands for Sergeant, SGT period Bill period Davis at gmail.com. Now, folks, my website, and I went to it last night and was able to, we had problems with it, but it's now back up thanks to my computer genius guy.
Awesome.
www.takingcareofchildren.net is my website. If you want to read more about me, more about my books, more about my presentations, you can even go shopping. But let me help you shop a little easier. Here's my phone number: 409-781-5726. Ladies and gentlemen, a lot of people have wanted my books. And yes, if you get 2 or more, I give you a heck of a discount. But here's what I want to be able to do. I want to be able to take and personally autograph those books to you. That is as an author. If
All
you're
of mine
not
are
an
personally
author,
autographed.
huh?
I said
You've
all
got
of
yours
mine are personally
autographed.
autographed. So he's
Well,
telling
I
you the
want
truth.
to. How about that? I want to autograph these books personally to whomever, and even the children's coloring book. If you have a certain child in mind, I print, not cursive, print their name and autograph the book personally to that child, making it special for them. So, ladies and gentlemen, I I mainly do the transactions over the phone, not through the website. Although we could do the website, it doesn't matter. Uh, but you got my phone number. Call me. We'll do the transaction over the phone. If you were to call me this morning, I'd have whatever you ordered in the mail to you this afternoon. That's pretty quick.
That is very,
So,
very quick.
folks, from all of this, and yes, Miss Patti and I have talked longer than we expected, but I want to tell you this. I want to continue saving lives,
Amen.
even if it means showing you how to go from being a victim to a survivor to an overcomer. Ladies and gentlemen, you're looking at an overcomer, Miss Patti. There she
Survivor.
is.
Thank
I
you.
want you to be like her. You know why? Because what happened to you is very negative. But I want you to learn how to take that negative experience. You're still alive. I want you out there with your experience and your help to help someone else.
Advocate for the next person. Absolutely,
Amen.
positively. Amen. So we're going to now stop this video recording. Bill, if you'll stay and just chat with me just for a moment, I would appreciate it. But audience, all of those numbers and email addresses will run across the bottom of the screen, so you don't have to try to get a pen and a hurry of paper. It will play over and over again, so you can watch it. You will also be able to watch this in bits and pieces. So if you want to watch 10 minutes and then watch 20 minutes later, however you decide, but you need to get through the entire video because it's well worth it. Thank you all
And
so
if
much
you
for joining
folks,
us, and goodbye.
if y'all folks want me to come and do a presentation, call me. Let's talk about it, because you and I together can save some lives. Let's do it.
We're dropping the mic.